Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Today we're going to be talking about navigating the number line and just almost trying to just find our way along this number line now that negative numbers are involved. Because once negatives get into the picture, it gets a little bit confusing and it seems to mess a lot of people up from my experiences. So we're going to do it a little bit slower, and I wanted to just give you a video to just familiarize you with how we can understand the number line here. So I've drawn one here down the bottom, and you can see we have something familiar, the way we've been looking at the positive numbers so far. And another thing that doesn't really get talked about too much that we should probably mention is that when we look at just regular numbers, when we're shown numbers, when we're in primary school or whatever, we count up from one, we go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever. Now it's important to note that all of these numbers, we write them like this, but in essence, we think of them as positive in terms of maths: +1, +2, +3, +4, +5, +6, and +7. So we just write it shorthand. So instead of writing, +4 or +4, we just write 4. So we write it in a type of shorthand, but what is implied here, what we mean by this, is that it is a 4, which is a number greater than 0. So it's positive. We can think of 0 as our starting point, and our numbers branch out from there. So let's rub this all out. And I want to now talk about this section of our number line, the negatives. So, an interesting way how this number line is constructed is that you can see the numbers, and what often confuses a lot of people is the numbers are getting bigger. But from what we talked about before in a lot of previous videos, as we go to the left of our number line, the numbers get smaller. Now, on the right-hand side, as we go in this direction, they get bigger. But from what we looked at, anytime a number gets smaller, it goes to the left. When it gets bigger, it goes to the right. But I want to talk about this just for a minute because it's important to understand, and what confuses a lot of students is that all of these numbers, they're getting, as we look from left to right, from 0 to the left, the numbers get bigger. But because of these negatives, because we're looking in the negative direction, they're actually getting smaller. Because you can think of them as, say, negative. Let's take a closer look at, for example, +7. 7 is a bigger number, for example, than 3. And in the positive end of our number line, it is bigger in the positive direction. Now here, for example, 7 once again is bigger than 3. So in the negative direction, my 7, the sort of magnitude of the number, how big it is a bigger number than 3. But because both of those are negative, 7 is bigger in the negative direction. So it's actually going to be smaller. Now, I know that's quite confusing, so we're going to have a lot of examples here, but all numbers are represented. I'll write this little dot point. You can copy this down if you'd like. So all numbers are represented in the following form. Well, I should say all integers, all of these whole numbers that we've been looking at. they have, let's do this in another color. For example, let's say positive 5. Now, when we write these numbers, we have a sign. So by sign, I mean whether it's positive or negative. It just tells us its identity of the number. Does it lie on the positive side of 0 or on the negative side of 0? That's what we mean by sign. And this number, well, the actual number itself is the magnitude. So that's that big word I used earlier. Now, the magnitude just means how big or small it is. So if I look at the number 5, the magnitude just tells us how far along the number line is it in the positive direction, or vice versa, going the other way. Now, we can think of negative numbers in the same way. Negative numbers, take for example, negative 3. Once again, it has this same sign. It has a negative now instead of a positive. And this tells us it's on the negative side. It's on the left-hand side of our 0, of our middle sort of starting point. And it also has a magnitude, so the size of the actual number. There. So all positive and negative numbers, all integers, are expressed in this form. But we said before, just with positive numbers, so we're not always writing plus 5. We just write 5, for example, or 13, or 247. Doesn't really matter. We usually leave out the plus sign because it's implied that it's positive, unless it says so otherwise, which is drawing a negative sign in front of it. So looking at the number line, let's do an activity in which we want to, first of all, just get a sense for whether, identifying which number is bigger than the other. So we're going to call this activity less or greater than. This is my first example. So I'm going to draw a number line once again, starting from 0. I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, and -1, -2, -3, -4. And in doing so, I want to answer a couple of questions. So I want to see comparing. So I want to see which number is bigger. In my example 1, -2 or 3. I want to see which is bigger out of these two. Now to do this, first I want to identify these numbers on my number line. So my -2 is here. Draw a little circle here where -2 is. And my 3 is here. Now what do we say again about our number line? Well, we talked a lot in the past that towards the right is the positive direction. So our numbers get bigger as we go to the right. If you remember when we talked about adding and subtracting, adding numbers pushed us over to the right of the number line. Subtracting numbers, making them smaller, made us go to the left. So positive numbers are always going to be bigger than negative numbers. Hopefully that makes intuitive sense. But my 3 here is on the positive side of 0, and my -2 is on the negative side of 0. So as we go in this direction on our number line, our numbers, if you remember, get bigger. So let's look at the direction here. We should be able to see here that 3 is actually bigger than -2 because it's further on the right of it on the number line. So we can say in mathematical notation, 3, we can write this symbol, which means greater than. 3 is greater than -2. We can also, if we look at it from a different perspective, we can also say that -2 is less than 3. These two pieces of information are telling us the exact same thing. It's just that this symbol means greater than, and this symbol means less than. So this is how we can start to navigate our way along the number line. Now let's do one more example. I'm going to copy this number line and paste it down here for another example. And I would always encourage you to refer back to your number lines because they're a really good way of just double checking where you're at. So seeing where, oops, these are meant to be negatives. Did I make that mistake here? No, I didn't. Cool. We can always just redraw a number line just to double check we're looking at the same, when we're making sure we're at the right spot. We know exactly where our numbers sit on this number line. So here I want to see, and this is going to be a slightly trickier question, question 2. I want to see which number's bigger. So -1 or -4. So when you see something like this, you're going to be tempted to go, all right, well, 4 is a bigger number than 1 because its magnitude's bigger. But here, we're looking from the perspective of negative numbers. So -4 means it is further along in the negative direction, meaning it is a smaller number. And -1, although it's still negative and 1 is a small number, it's actually closer. Whoops. It's actually closer to this 0. It's a lot closer to our positive, larger, greater numbers than -4 is. That's another way you can think of these negative numbers, is that your -1, for example, compared to -4, your -1 is closer to 0, or the positive numbers. And this means it's close to being a positive number. It's close to being a bigger number because positive numbers are bigger than negative numbers. So we can think of it this way. We can also say that, all right, I still know that as I go on my right-hand side of my number line, as I go from left to right, my numbers get bigger. So by that logic, my -1, because it's on the right of my -4, it is bigger. It's higher up. It's more on the right-hand side than -4 is. So it's going to be a bigger number than -4. So we can say that -1 is greater than -4. We're showing that my -1 here is bigger than my -4. We can think of it as either, well, because it's to the right of 4. So if we look in the direction here, my numbers get bigger as I go towards the right. And it's also closer to 0, or closer to the positive numbers. And positive numbers are always going to be bigger than negative numbers. So those are two ways you can think about the number line. And I just wanted to give you a slow look at how we can construct the number line in the first place. So as I go towards my right, my numbers get bigger. as I go towards my left, the numbers get smaller. And I can fill in this number line this way and locate, depending on their position, which is the bigger number. So hopefully this helps with some of these confusing examples, because like this one, where 4 is a bigger number than 1, but it's bigger in the negative direction. So a bigger number in the negative direction is going to have a smaller value than this number here. Now, if some of you live in colder places, for example, if I say it's -1 degrees outside versus -30, some of you hopefully know what -30 from the perspective of measurement means. -30 means, oh, okay, it's a really, really cold day, because it's a bigger number in the negative direction, in the same way that we observed with this -4 here. But that's everything for today. Hopefully this video has given you some more confidence in terms of interpreting, making sense of this number line. And in the next video, we're going to look at introducing some operations here as well. Thank you so much for joining me, guys. I'll see you in the next video.